The Hidden Curriculum by Olivier Fidelia. So I'm going to start by saying the mission statement of my school. The mission statement of my school is the E. Rivers Elementary School mission is to develop confident, resourceful, and respectful global learners through a tradition of achievement and excellence. I fully agree and support this statement. I think confidence is one of the greatest attributes an individual can have, and it's an essential ingredient to success. I support this statement via my teaching since I, along with many others, owe our success to confidence. I teach students to be confident in themselves, their work, and their intelligence. One way I teach students to be confident is by having them go up in front of the class and explain their mathematical thinking when solving a problem to the entire classroom and to myself. Even my shy students have become accustomed to this, and now they get excited to explain their mathematical thinking. I teach students to be resourceful by assigning science projects, in which they must pick a topic and research it using resources I provide and create PowerPoint presentations and posters to, present to the whole class. The definition of hidden curriculum. The hidden curriculum can be best defined as the values, skills, attributes, lessons, and perspectives that students learn unintentionally during the academic journey. Examples of the hidden curriculum include respect for authority, social norms, kindness, punctuality, and behavioral expectations. In the article Curriculum and the Work of Teachers, the author states that we can think of the hidden curriculum as having distinctive characteristics, with the first being that it's unintentional, and the second characteristic is that it's learned by students via their attendance in school and everything that occurs during the school day. She gives an example by discussing a math teacher who gives a retest every time students fail a test. Well, the first time students fail a test. And she says because of the math teacher doing this, the hidden message that's being taught to students is that they don't have to try hard on the first test because there's always going to be a second test that they can retake to get a better grade. Some of the basic commitments I have as a teacher is that I teach to cultivate a sense of confidence and persistence and other traits that are important to success to my students. I like to teach them persistence because in life you will get knocked down. You're going to have obstacles in your road, and it's important to know how to get back up and keep pushing forward despite setbacks. I teach confidence because students need to be confident in their abilities and their academic work. And because students are young, they're at an impressionable, they're impressionable in the sense that they could be peer pressured. They could want to follow trends and have a mob mentality. And, as teachers, we don't want to teach followers. We want to teach students how to be leaders. And lastly, I like to teach my students to be independent. As fourth graders, students should not be asking me for help with everything as if they're like kindergarten students or first graders. Fourth graders are about to go into middle school in 2 years, so it's best to teach them how to be independent learners so that when they do get to middle school, it's not such a big change for them. Again, I know my students are young, but middle school isn't too short years, so it's best, in my belief, it's best to have my students work, hard in my class, so that in fifth grade and sixth grade and in the future they could better get accustomed to the increased rigor of each grade level. And lastly, the last commitment I have is fostering relationships with my students. Although I do give a lot of work and my classwork is rigorous, I balance that out by fostering bonds with my students. At school, I'm known as like the cool teacher because I play football with the kids during recess. I play with all the fourth grade students, even in other classes. Even the girls join in. On our free time, on our downtime, I like to discuss anime, video games, superhero movies with my students because those are things that I find interesting, and students also find interesting. So it creates a common bond between us. And lastly, to foster positive bonds with my students, I just ask them questions. I ask them questions about their personal lives. I ask questions about their families. I joke around with them. So all these things help build strong bonds with my students. How my commitments are reflected in my teaching. Again, the rigorous teaching. I like to teach whole group for about 15 to 20 minutes, depending on the topic. And then I like to break into small groups. My students are working all period. They have like assignments that I create via Google Form. And these assignments could be 15 to 30 questions, just depending. Sometimes I like to give 20 to 30 questions because it helps students build the endurance to do an assignment for an extended period of time that has a lot of questions. Nowadays, everyone in schools talks about how students have low endurance when testing. So I like to prepare them for the standardized test by giving them longer assignments from time to time. The reason I also like giving a lot of classwork is because it's an assessment tool for me. So I use that to let me know what students need to learn, what I need to reteach. So all these things are helpful when assessing students as well. I also like to teach students through mistakes. A lot of people think that failure is the end of success, but a lot of people don't realize that failure can be the beginning of success. So I want to teach that to my students as well. Even when they make mistakes, they still have, they can still learn from it. Sometimes when my students barely failed an assignment, I like to take a couple questions that they missed and change them and give students an opportunity to get it right. Sometimes students get answers wrong, not because they don't understand, but maybe they got, they lost focus. Maybe they got distracted by a classmate. Maybe they were going a little bit too fast and didn't check their work. So sometimes they make those mistakes. I give them a chance and they get a better grade. And I use the opportunity to tell students to focus, to use the tools I give them, like double checking their answers. For example, if they're doing a multiplication, they should be checking their answer with division. Little things like that I throw in to teach them the value of double checking your work or staying focused. And again, I like to foster relationships by playing football and talking about animes and other interests that I share with students. How I can better communicate these commitments. As a third-year teacher who's been in the education field for 8 years, there's still some things that I am working on, and differentiation is one of them. It's hard to differentiate because, when a student is like 1 or 2 grade levels below, it's almost impossible to teach at a lower level while trying to teach students to stay on the current curriculum. For example, students don't know how to regroup while subtracting. I can't spend 3 or 4 weeks on teaching them how to regroup while subtracting when we have division, multiplication, and other fourth grade material to learn. So trying to find ways to differentiate from my lower group in a way that really benefits them is something I'm working on. So I think that'd be something that I could better in my teaching and commitments. Skills and attributes I would like to teach my students. If I had all the time in the world, I'd teach my students more SEL lessons. I think it's important to teach students how to empathize and how to make better decisions. I feel like these things can help help teachers manage classes easier, as the drama between students would, be reduced significantly. For example, if students learn how to empathize, they're less likely to bully students. They're less likely to talk bad about students. They're less likely to shun students because they could understand how all these things would make them feel and they wouldn't want to do it to somebody else. I would also like to teach estimation because that's a skill that we no longer teach in school, but I think it's a skill that really helps build number sense and math fluency. For example, standardized testing obviously is important in schools, and when a student knows how to estimate, they can easily eliminate multiple choice choices just based on ballparking an answer. So if we have 4 multiple choices, if you could if you could eliminate 2 choices, you go from a 25% chance of getting the answer right if you didn't know it to a 50% chance of getting the answer right. So these are skills that are important for students as well, because test taking is a skill that students do need to learn and better as well. And lastly, the negative aspects of the hidden curriculum in my teaching. In the article The Daily Grind by Philip Jackson, he discussed how students are in school for an extremely long time. One school year is equivalent to 1,000 hours in school, and during their whole academic lifetime, students are in school for well over 10,000 years. So with that in mind, like, teachers must keep that in mind, because students spend a lot of time with teachers, so it's very possible for students to pick up on the traits and behaviors of their teachers. For example, if a teacher is responding in a sarcastic or annoyed or angry tone when a student asks them to repeat something over and over again, that can in turn make a student not want to ask questions anymore, because they feel like every time they ask questions, somebody's gonna, respond in that kind of tone. Additionally, students pick up on these traits. So in my class, from my tones, I've witnessed that some of my high students have copied my tones where I'm frustrated or annoyed, and they've used it on their classmates who are in lower groups than them. So again, this is just to remind us that as teachers, we do have to be mindful of the things that we do, because students do pick up on it since they spend so much time next to us. So all in all, that was my project, my paper on the hidden curriculum, and how how it affects both positively and negatively.